Hello boys, welcome back to another session of video tutorials, and this session is meant for class 12th biology students, and this is for 3rd December 2020. As all of us know, we are into the revision mode. We are revising the entire syllabus. As part of it, today we are revising chapter number 13, Populations and Organisms, or Organisms and Populations. As in our previous sessions, we were talking about the various attributes of populations and then the interactions of the populations. What is basically the population interaction? As all of us know, we are not alone in this world. Are we? Of course we are not. You may have many human beings and other animals surrounding you always. Similarly, if you see the population of other organisms, you will observe many organisms living together. None of the organisms in this world can survive alone. This interaction between populations gives rise to population interaction. So, the population interactions are having many types as we discussed. So, types of population interaction. In nature, all organisms and their populations interact with one another to some degree or the other. This is how an ecosystem works perfectly. This population interaction is generally between two different species populations. These interactions can be beneficial or neutral or detrimental. Recollect from your memory, we have put in the table, if it is beneficial, we have put plus. If it is neutral, we have put 0. If it is detrimental, we have put minus. So accordingly, there are 6 types of population interactions. The different ways of populations of two different species interact with each other can be summarized under the following headings, like what we have been studying. First one is, as we said, mutualism, mutual, between the two, beneficial, plus plus. When two different population species interact in such a manner that it is beneficial to each other, then this form of interaction is called mutualism. For example, lichens are the classic example of mutualism, wherein algae and fungi both benefit each other. Like fungi gives protection to algae by secreting the antiseptic materials, and algae gives food for the fungi. So algae is getting benefited by the protection from the fungi. Fungi is getting benefit through algal food. So this is classic example of mutualism. Even plants and animals show good mutualism. You must have observed in your own society. Plants need some agents for pollination and seed dispersal, and these agents are the animals. Animals in turn are rewarded with nectar or the fruits of the plants. Again, see, plants and animals are mutually getting benefited. But even in mutualism, there are some species which may not reward the other species. This leads to co-evolution of the species. And then we go for the competition. When the closely related species fight for limited resources, there is a competition between the species or among the species. These types of interactions are called competition. This fight for the resources can occur between diverse groups of the population also. Competition can occur even when there is an unlimited supply of resources. Here, it depends on the superiority of one species over the other. In the presence of one population species, the other population species may not use the resources effectively. Like you must have seen a big banyan tree. Under the big banyan tree, like we have got in Chalikas, you might have observed that there won't be any grass growing under it, because the banyan tree is like a big brother attitude. Okay, so the other populations like grasses may not use the resources effectively under the big brother banyan tree. But if the dominant species is removed, let's say we remove that banyan tree, then other species will use the resources to their full capacity and flourish. So basically competition is naturally for the resources that are available in the ecosystem, particularly natural resources that are available in the ecosystem, like food, shelter, and of course for water. So always organisms fight for food, fight for the space, fight for the water. In the bargain, Darwin's theory of evolution. There will be struggle for existence, there will be intra-fight, there will be inter-fight, and at the end of the intra and inter-fight, survival of the fittest. And the fit organisms reproduce and organisms evolve. So competition in one way should be good enough that it brings out the best in one's organisms, one's species. So we need to be thankful to competition. So it's interaction either among individuals of same species or between individuals of different species. Occurs among closely related species, but not always true. Unrelated species also compete, like flamingo and fish compete for the zooplanktons, means small insects in the water. Feeding efficiency of species reduce due to other species even if resources are plenty, like abundant tortoise we said. And evidences for competition: competitive release, species distribution restricted to small areas due to competitive superspecies. And Gauss competition exclusion principle, we talked about it. Two closely related species competing for same resources cannot coexist, as the competitively inferior one will be eliminated, like we said, banyan tree and the grasses. And resource partition: two competing species avoid competition by different feeding and foray patterns, like MacArthur warblers foraging activities. And then we go to parasitism. In parasitism, of course, this is an interaction. It's an interaction where one species, parasite, depends on the other species, like we call it host, for food and shelter, and the host is harmed. Always it is the host that is getting loss. So this is an interaction. Parasitism is an interaction of populations where parasitic mode of nutrition is clearly seen, with one species being completely dependent on the other host species for its food, for its nutrient requirements. Parasitism is clearly seen in many taxonomic groups, right from plants to higher vertebrates. And in that, there are two types. One is the ectoparasite, another is the endoparasites. So ecto, as the name suggests, outside. So the parasite stays outside the body of the host and sucks the nutrition. And endoparasite, endo, inside. The parasite stays inside the host, like small intestine, stomach, like that, and derives the nutrition. So we say endoparasitism. So parasites and host self-evolve. Adaptation of parasites. See, if the parasite has to be endoparasite, it has to withstand the, for example, in the stomach, we secrete various juices, various enzymes, particularly acidic medium, HCl. So the endoparasite has to overcome that, the strength of the acids and other enzymes. So they need to undergo certain adaptations. It's a must and should. So loss of unnecessary sense organs, these are the adaptations. Having hooks and suckers so that they attach themselves to the body externally, or inside, if they are endoparasites, they will attach with hooks and sucker to intestine or stomach. And of course, loss of digestion, there is no need because 24/7 food is available. And high reproductive capacity, yes, they need to, because loss of a lot of food is available, plus they need to eat fast and cause damage to the host. So parasites reduce the survival of the host, definitely, by eating them. Growth and reproductive rate are reduced of the parasite. Parasites make the host and render the host vulnerable to its predators by making them weak. So the host becomes, with the unwanted guest, becomes weaker and weaker. So as I said, types of parasites: two, ectoparasite, depend on external surface of the host. Example, lice in the head, and ticks on dogs. These are ectoparasites. Endoparasites take shelter within the body of the host organism, example liver fluke and plasmodium, which will be present inside our blood. And next we go to the mutualism. Just now we discussed about it. Its interaction where both it is plus plus, species A and species B both will have plus plus, and we said the lichens are the best example, both algae and fungi. Mycorrhiza, of course, we have been talking about it, fungi and roots of higher plants. Again, the roots of higher plants will supply nutrition to fungi, and fungi will secrete liquids that protect the roots of the higher plants. And pollination of plants by insects, just now we discussed. Mediterranean orchid, sexual deceit for pollination, appears as a female bee. So these are all the various interactions and various methods, various adaptations that they undergo. And then we talk about the amensalism. Amensalism in this kind of interaction, hello, amensalism, we talked about the mutualism, okay, endoparasites we talked as amensalism. Interaction between two different species in which one species is harmed and the other species is neither harmed nor benefited. So one is harmed, there is a harm to one species, and to another it is neither harmed nor benefited. That's why we write minus and 0 here. Example, bacterial culture. After few days fungus growth will be there on it like penicillium, and its secretions of chemical will kill bacteria but no benefits to fungi. So in this kind of interaction, amensalism between populations, one population finds itself in harm while the other is unaffected. A good example for amensalism could be a condition where the wider and taller plants inhibit the growth of nearby smaller plants. A few plants secrete some substances which inhibit the growth of the plants growing nearby. They may also kill them outrightly to remove the competition. I talked about this again. And one more I think we need to talk, that is we talked about amensalism, and then we talked about mutualism and commensalism. In this kind of interaction, one species population benefits the other species population, but the other species population does not benefit nor it is harmed in any way. If you have been to rural areas, you must have seen some birds perching on cattle. This is a good example of commensalism. You must have seen the birds, egret bird sitting on top of the buffalo, the cattle, and eating that. So here the cattle do not benefit anything nor cause any harm, but as the cattle moves, they stir up the small insects hiding in the grass. It's these insects that the birds feed on, thereby benefiting to larger extent. So some of the examples we can think of it, like example of commensalism, barnacles and whales, emperor shrimp and sea cucumbers. Then example of predation, African wild dog and zebra, cheetah and gazelle. Example of parasitism, aphids, that is insects and plants, cuscuta and blueberry plants. So these are the various interactions that we talk about. So keep on